Hello, I'm Nancy McCrae. I'm a fiber artist living in Northern Michigan, and I'm the chair of the Art Rapids Education Committee. We are also participating in Wellness Wednesdays, and the project that I'm bringing to you today is called branch weaving. I chose branch weaving because the materials are readily available, probably around your house, and it's very easy to learn how to do it. You can also be wildly creative and have a lot of fun with it. I hope you do. You only need a few simple supplies to do a branch weaving. First of all, you have to find the perfect branch. I pick mine up off the ground. After a good storm comes through, you're going to find lots of those. You want a branch that is sturdy and Y-shaped. By sturdy, I mean that if you can put gentle pressure on it without breaking it, that's probably a good branch. If it does break, that's not your branch. You also need some string or yarn for warp. This is a Navajo wool warp, but you can use kitchen string or any string that you have around the house. You need something to weave into your warp threads. I have here some herbs that you can weave. It makes your kitchen smell great. This is lavender. And of course, many people use yarn when they're making their branch weaving. You also could weave in paper strips or other things that you just have around that are bendy. If it's bendy, you can weave it in and make a very creative stick weaving. Scissors are handy to have. You need a fork. This is a tapestry fork, but a kitchen fork works just fine. And you need a tapestry needle. I have a long one and a short one here. The only thing that's really important about them is that they have a big eye that you can get your yarn or weaving material through. And that's all you need. Now we're going to warp the loom. Start by tying a knot around the bottom of the V part of your Y branch. Tie a knot that's going to stay. I like to leave a long enough tail that I can weave in later. It's very important when you are wrapping your branches to wrap very tightly. That's why we have a sturdy branch. Go from the bottom branch up to the top branch, all the way around. I'm pulling really tightly. Then you're going to go back down, but over that bottom branch and all the way around. Once again, back up to the top branch, over it, and all the way around. Now, after you get out a little ways, this is a really important tip. I'm still pulling very tightly, but I'm pulling a little less tightly than I did before. If you don't loosen your tension just a bit, by the time you get out here, you start to pull these branches in, which causes these warp threads to become loose. You don't want that. It might take you two or more tries, or 3, to do this. Up around the top, down around the bottom, and you can shift them around a little bit, so don't worry too much about placement. You just keep going with wrapping around the upper branch and around the lower branch, doing a figure 8 until you have gone as far as you'd like to go or run out of string, which is what happened to me. And in the last bit, you go around a few times to secure that end. And then finally, you take that string and tuck it under the last warp thread, like so. And then you do it again. And again, I left a long enough tail to weave in later. Okay. First thing I'm going to do is tuck in that end that we just saw from the warping process. And notice that some strings are higher and some strings are lower. We're going to use that to our advantage. This weaving process is going to be an over, under plain weave process. First you want to grab a piece of yarn, not more than an arm's length for you, because more than an arm's length gets to be unwieldy. Thread your big eye needle, and I'm just going to take this yarn underneath that upper thread. I am going under the upper thread and over the lower thread, but with no effort at all. And I'm going to leave a tail. When I get to the very end where the yarn is tied, I'm going to go over that one because I am alternating under one, over one. Whoops, don't lose the tail. Then you want to go back the other way. I went over this little knot piece, so I'm going to go under it, over the next one, then under, over, under, over, under. And notice that we're going over, under this way, but also this way. If I went under the warp thread last time, I go over it this time. And you keep going like that. You can make it a little faster if you scoot over to the other edge, because that will still give you that nice plain weave. Notice that I'm putting hills in my weaving, in my weft yarn, and that is to give you enough yarn slack so that you don't pull in on the edges. I'm going to use my fork to pack it down. I'm going to show you now what to do when you run out of yarn. The first piece that I had has run out, so I'm going to weave it as far as I can, tap it down, and then I take a new piece of yarn on the needle and weave it in the same direction, going over and under the same threads that the last tail did. And I pull it through so that the old tail and the new tail overlap by a couple of inches. You tap that down and no one will ever know where you began the new piece of yarn. If you want to start a new color, you would do it that same way. So let's say you would like to weave some herbs in. I've got some lavender branches here and I think lavender will dry nicely and not get too wilty, but in the meantime it smells great. It's easiest if you put it in along that edge that's kind of open and then tap it down from here. I like to leave the little heads hanging out. Maybe tease out some of the leaves. And this was the same over under path as the last row. So I'm just kind of tucking them in with that last row. And now when I go back, I will alternate the over under. So I'm going under that warp thread where I went over it with the herb last time. Over, under. Sometimes the under is harder. That's okay. And so on. Here it is, my finished branch. I hope you try this. It's fun, it's pretty easy, and you can really exercise your imagination and your creativity. If you'd like to know more about my organization, Art Rapids, please visit www.artrapids.org. And if you'd like to know more about me, please visit my website. The link is on the next page. Thank you.